Chapter 14. Quiet. Sully noticed that he could hear his own heartbeat. Penetrating quiet. The only sounds were the sounds he was making. Deafening silence. The retired Commodore shook his head and activated the Jadoon scanner as he took in the dismal view. This particular mammoth corridor was abandoned, of course. Spooky and horrendously dark. Double, of course. Sully knew and expected the Jadoon craft to be enormous. This much only made sense. Yet the disconcerting part was how little internal variation there was. He could easily become lost and never found again in this immense darkness, were it not for the device that the guard had given him. The scanner showed multiple levels, each level dedicated to either prison transport or crew quarters and crew beneficial sections. Medical, mess hall, etc. Everything heavily compartmentalized. Everything brutally simple. And everything completely deserted. Sully admitted to himself that something was very, very wrong here. Opting to head to a location that is typically popular on vessels, and to see what the giant rhinoceroses ate, Sully ventured into the gigantic Jadoon mess hall. The retired Commodore was completely taken by surprise when he found the entirety of the deck, a square kilometer, had been dedicated to the cafeteria. Aside from the unusual size, what he found most incongruous was that it wasn't really a cafeteria at all. It was a complete savanna. An artificial sky, held above the savanna wilderness, and the deck, higher gravity than normal, was covered in 5-foot-tall elephant grass. The Jadoon were herbivores. Sully waded into the tall grass, enjoying the, albeit artificial, heat from the sun emulator, which hung so far above him, it almost looked authentic. He was overcome by a feeling of relaxation, peace, similar to what Purge did automatically for passengers whom had boarded her in distress. He found himself smiling goofily for a moment and forgetting what it was he was supposed to be doing down here. Then there was a noise, the horrendous noise. Something in the grass nearby, slowly at first. Then it was running toward him, very fast. The Commodore tried desperately to retrieve the Jadoon weapon, but it was stuck. It was coming. It was nearly upon him. Sully yanked and yanked at the weapon. He freed the weapon, causing his pants to fall down. He heard, felt, something leap up from the grass, right at him. Sully turned. Something landed on his chest, and he hit the ground. Back up on the bridge, the stranger in the scarlet suit was typing on his time watch when he asked, "What's the name of your ship?" "Payment retribution upon receipt of correct paperwork," the Jadoon captain answered. "You are kidding me." "I'm not kidding you." "You Jadoon and your crazy poetic romanticism. Why is it your helmet stented? Get into a fight?" The Jadoon captain didn't respond. Choosing to ignore the Time Lord's question, he simply turned back to his work. At least, he looked busy. "All right, then." The man in red spun on a dime and left the bridge. The other access to the payment retribution upon receipt of correct paperwork levels took a long time, especially since the man in red had to scan every communication device manually. What he found was somewhat disturbing, as every single console between the bridge and the lower decks had been smashed. The devices, however, were all destroyed in the same way, brutally, physically, beaten to a pulp. And it didn't take the Time Lord long, after adjusting his vision, to see the same impact marks on all the devices were a uniform size and consistency, a very large Jadoon hand. After finding one console in the mid-decks to work on, the alien lay on his back, connecting and splicing wires, trying to find purged data. Working with his futuristic temporal wrist device, the Time Lord finally found some answers, though not at all what he was expecting. Outside of the payment retribution, outside of the ship, the massive Presage shower was awash in old signals. Old Earth signals. This Jadoon craft was swimming in a sea of mid-20th century Earth television and radio waves, an invisible ocean of old broadcasts out among the stars. The man in red stood, dusting himself off, intrigued. He walked to a nearby viewing portal and stared out at the Perseid shower. It was spectacular. So spectacular that the stranger in the scarlet suit did not notice the electroform charge into a corporeal existence behind him. It reached out, gripping his shoulder. The Time Lord felt a massive shock.